Hello, and welcome to DRC Chat on Air with the Sweetland Digital Rhetoric Collaborative. I'm DRC Fellow Lee Meredith, and I'm here today with fellow Paula Miller. Hi, Paula. So we're beginning to wrap up our blog carnival on digital writing in the K-12 classroom, and as part of that effort, we're going to talk today with Delia DeCourcey. And Delia is a literacy consultant with Oakland Schools and the Associate Director of the Oakland Writing Project in Waterford, Michigan. And this past fall, Delia coordinated the 4T virtual conference on digital writing, which was an online conference that focused on research, pedagogy, and tools of writing in digital spaces in the K-12 classroom. So Delia, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Right, thanks. So Delia, we thought you could begin by talking a little bit more about what the 4T virtual conference is and how it came about.
Sure. So we are actually a satellite conference of the 4T conference. We call it the 4T main, just to make the distinction clear in our planning circles. So the 4T conference and the 4Ts are teachers teaching teachers about technology. It started as a grassroots effort in 2011 at the University of Michigan School of Education, and the founder is Liz Kolb, who is involved in our conference as well. And she really wanted to involve teachers in teaching other teachers about technology. And so really the hallmark of this virtual conference is that we train our webinar facilitators in effective facilitation. So they receive professional development, and then that makes the quality of the sessions higher, and the webinars are interactive. And a lot of the webinars that you experience online are not. They tend to be sort of sit and get. So that makes our conference a bit different.
Yeah, great. Well, it sounds like you already talked about some of the special kinds of things that you have to do to put on a virtual conference, such as do professional development for the presenters. Are there other challenges and benefits of doing a virtual conference as opposed to a face-to-face conference?
Oh, I think the huge benefit is that people can just stay in their pajamas. And not only that, I mean, if you want to attend a session live, you can stay in your pajamas, drink your coffee, you got your computer there. But if you can't make it, then all the sessions are archived. So people can really access the professional learning anywhere, anytime, and when that is convenient. So they can also get credit for attending the in-person sessions, which is great, and the in-person sessions also provide a little bit more stimulation, I would say, because the chat rooms are very active. So that's, I think, a real benefit, especially for teachers who are so busy. It can be hard to fit everything in. So they like the flexibility of the conference, and I think one of the challenges, well, technology is always a challenge, right? So we're always hoping that all the connections run smoothly and we don't have any issues with platforms. And last year for the 4T main conference, we had so many attendees that we actually met our room limit on a couple of sessions, and so people couldn't get in. They were a little bit unhappy about that. But both the conferences are free, so so there's that. So that can be the technology side of things. You know, that's a challenge in any kind of context when you're relying heavily on technology, I'd say.
Right, for sure. But you haven't encountered any sort of particularly challenges that you feel like you're still working on in terms of the virtual conference format, or you feel like you've pretty much ironed out the kinks?
Well, we had the huge benefit of all the learning from the previous 4T main conferences, and I was on the planning committee for the last, I think, the last two to 3 years. So we came in with a lot of knowledge, and we had a nice model for the professional learning already laid out. It was about 15 hours of professional learning for our webinar facilitators, so that was fantastic. What are things we're still ironing out? I would say, so we used to do lightning sessions for the 4T main, and those presenters did not receive any professional learning around webinar facilitation. So we've since we just cut those out this year. We're always working on elevating the quality of sessions. That is super important to us because we believe strongly that virtual learning, virtual professional development can be really excellent and can be really engaging, even though there isn't probably enough of that out there. And so I think it's really one of our missions to make sure that that is the case. So every year we're trying to up our game, and we're also trying to be really responsive to what are the main concerns and trends out there in when it comes to integrating technology effectively into instruction. So.
Great. Well, you talked about how active your sessions are, and that seems like a challenge in and of itself to make an online conference really active and not feel so static. What are some of the things that you do to facilitate that?
So that is a huge challenge, and that's what we spend a lot of our time on in professional learning. So what are the different strategies for that? In the digital writing conference, a lot of our presenters used Google Docs as a way of engaging participants in conversation and idea sharing. So they might have had a single Google Doc for a session, but there were multiple parts to the Google Doc. And so I can actually show you one of those if that would be helpful. And so while participants don't have mic rights, like they can't actually speak to one another, they can talk in the chat room, and then they can share content in the Google Doc, and we'll have actual activity. So the other thing that we have people do is actually practice using the tools that the presenter is presenting on. So for example, we had a session on hacking the internet, hacking as writing, and the presenter actually had people going out and hacking websites, like the CNN News website. And that was pretty innovative, and I think pretty challenging for participants too. So it's not like you're just sitting there listening to somebody talk, but you're actually going out and using the technology. And I think even if you're only doing that for 5 or 10 minutes, you're trying out a new tool, and then that makes your likelihood of adopting that tool later on a little bit higher. So.
Definitely. Well, and can you tell me a little bit more about that? So when you say that presenters were actually out there hacking the CNN website, what were they doing?
That's a really good question. So I'm not going to be able to get into the technological details of that. I was sort of behind the scenes at that time, and I wasn't hacking myself. But apparently there's a way that you can, and I want to say there's a website or a tool where you can actually take code from a website and change that code and then broadcast it elsewhere on the web. So you can actually like insert your own article into CNN or change a headline. It doesn't show up on the CNN website itself, but you can sort of show a model of what that looks like. So that's my understanding of it. If people want to check out that webinar, it's recorded and it's pretty interesting to think about hacking as a form of writing or rewriting. So.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating, and we'll also put up links to some of the particular sessions that we talked about on the DRC site as well.
Great.
So are there any other sessions that you want to talk about or highlight in particular?
Well, it's probably worth talking about our keynotes. We had 2 really great keynotes. So a major part of this conference was that our partners for the conference were 4 different writing project sites. So people, I'm hoping, are familiar with the National Writing Project, and Oakland Schools, ISD, is a writing project site in conjunction with the University of Michigan, which is our sponsor. And so the Oakland Writing Project, the Northern Shores Writing Project, Saginaw Bay Writing Project, and Chippewa River Writing Project at Central Michigan University were all partners in the conference. And so we asked the executive director of the National Writing Project, Elise Eidman-Adal, to be one of our keynotes, and she delivered this really interesting talk on it was called Digital Writing, Connected Learning, and the Civic Mission of Schools. And so she shared all this fascinating research she's been doing with some partners about engaging youth in participatory politics and how students can make a difference by sharing their voices, and also just the importance of that given how disengaged we are as a society in our democracy. So she shared some statistics about that, you know, how many eligible voters actually vote. And you know, people who know about the National Writing Project know that a big thrust of their work has to do with social justice. So it makes a lot of sense that her talk would engage these issues around engaging students in having a voice and making a difference. So that was pretty neat. Troy Hicks, who is a professor at Central Michigan University and is also the director of the Chippewa River Writing Project and the author of multiple books on digital literacy and digital writing, he did a session on writing as making. So the whole notion of writing in digital spaces as kind of a maker activity, and you know, the maker space that's something that's been really big in education for the last, I don't know, 3 to 5 years maybe. There are a lot more maker spaces that have popped up around Michigan, and I know someone in the School of Information at the University of Michigan, Kristen Fontecchiaro, who has been a big part of the 4T conference, She just got a big grant to help establish more makerspaces in Michigan. So I think it was great that Troy was talking about something that's very sort of salient right now, and looking at how digital writing kind of plays into that. I would also note that we had a couple panels, and that was a new format for us. We hadn't done panels at the 4T before. So we had two different panels. One was on bridging the gap between high school and college writing. And so we had a high school English teacher, a literacy consultant from Oakland Schools, who's a colleague of mine, and then Jeff Grable, who is the director of the writing... the WIDE program. I'm not going to remember what WIDE stands for, at Writing in Digital Environments at MSU. And so he and the consultant and the teacher have been involved in some research around student feedback and using this platform called Eli Review. So they were talking about their work and also, making that transition, how teachers can help students be ready for college writing and what the demands are, especially when it comes to digital writing in the first-year writing program, sort of what he sees in their program. So it was great to have multiple voices. I would say the panels were not as interactive, but people found them really interesting, engaging.
Just a quick aside, in terms of the format, were the panels using the same kind of webinar technology that the single presentations were?
So I actually made some decisions about, we used two different platforms. So for the interactive webinars, we use Blackboard Collaborate, and that's the platform we've always used for the 4T. And the reason for that is it has some more affordances that allow participants to engage a little bit more. Like, you can actually write on the screen and it will show up like on the slides. So we like that a lot. But for the panels and also for the keynotes, actually, I used Adobe Connect. And I really wanted for the panels to use Adobe Connect because you can sort of do that Brady Bunch style video. So you've got everybody up on the screen using their webcams and you can see them all, and make them as large or small as you want to. And also the Adobe Connect, we had more capacity in the room, so that's why we use them for the keynotes. So we try to be versatile, try to adapt.
Yeah, it's great. Well, I think it's great to have some of these kind of concrete logistical tips for people who might be interested in organizing a virtual conference like yours.
Yeah, absolutely.
So any other sessions or panels that you want to particularly talk about?
Sure. So one session that was especially well attended was blogging in the classroom, and that was presented by a fourth grade teacher. Maybe she's fifth grade teacher from Clarkston, which is a district in Oakland County. And this is a teacher she's been doing blogging for a few years with her kids, and so she talked about the evolution of that pedagogically for her. And then her moderator is a high school English teacher. So the moderator, Erica, was able to talk about using blogging in the classroom from her perspective as a secondary teacher. And so I haven't talked about that yet. Not only do we have presenters who we train in effective facilitation, but we also recruit moderators who are kind of their partners in creating the webinar. And so the moderator ideally is somebody who's pretty tech savvy, and we got really lucky with the digital writing conference that everyone we recruited, with the exception of one person, had a really strong content background in English language arts. So they were able to not only support the presenter on the tech side of things, but as the webinar was evolving in creation, to give feedback, to give input. So really act as a great collaborator with the main presenter. So that was super cool. Yeah, so there you've got all the moderators up on screen. Thank you for putting that up. So the moderator, I like to think of the moderator when I moderate, which I did a fair amount of during the conference. You're kind of like the virtual concierge. So you're helping out anybody who's in the webinar with any tech problems they have, any questions they have. You're kind of moderating the chat room to the degree that the presenter would like you to, and just making sure everything runs smoothly. And you also introduce and close the session. So that's a key part of the 4T model, I would say.
Also, I would think that would be particularly helpful in a virtual setting like this to make sure that everything flows and is kind of integrated.
It is. That's absolutely the case. And also from an emergency standpoint, if for some reason the presenter gets cut, their internet gets cut off, the moderator can jump in and we say, you got to be ready to improv. You know, you got to be ready to present the next slide. So, which has happened once. So it's good to have that other person in there who can take the helm.
Contingencies.
That's right.
Well, so it was great hearing about some of the specific sessions, but what about any general strategies or trends did you find emerge from the conference as a whole?
Well, so as I was reflecting on this, actually during the conference, I reflected on this pretty heavily because we held a final discussion for participants that Troy Hicks and I facilitated. So I kind of wanted to be thinking about what the main themes in the conference were that came up. And the ones that came to mind were the importance of having authentic audiences for students to write to, building a community of trust in the classroom, collaboration among students and how to make that work really effectively, the role of the teacher as coach, and in being a coach, empowering students as writers, thinkers, and producers of media. And then also the importance of reflecting on writerly choices, so metacognition and metacognitive strategies. So what really strikes me about that list is it's not particularly specific to writing in digital spaces, it's specific to writing instruction in general. And I actually think that that's appropriate and that makes a lot of sense. While our writerly choices, I think, are more, in many ways, more complex when we're dealing with writing in digital spaces, a lot of the issues that we're dealing with as educators and coaches of students who are writing, they should be the same as what we deal with when we're dealing with paper and pencil. But that was kind of interesting to realize as I was reflecting. I mean, this conference is really a conference, it's about pedagogy, and so, there's a lot of overlap with regular writing instruction, but we're introducing interesting, innovative tools, but it's not a tool-focused conference. It's a conference that's heavily focused on the pedagogy of teaching writing in digital spaces. So.
Yeah, thanks. That makes sense. And then, are there any issues or areas that might merit more attention or research from scholars and practitioners in the future that came out of the conference as well?
For sure. Actually, before I address that question, there were 3 items I wanted to add that are specific to integrating technology into the teaching of writing, which is the digital divide and how to bridge the digital divide, especially for districts that don't have much technology, don't have great Wi-Fi, versus districts that have a wealth of it. And then persuading administrators about the importance of technology in the classroom, and maybe implementing bring your own device policies for schools where there aren't a lot of funds for technology. So that we got those questions a fair amount. And then also, if you're a newbie, if you really do want to start on this journey, how do you start? What steps do you take? So those were some of the key questions that came up that were more specific to the tech side of things.
So a newbie as in a new writing instructor who's trying to incorporate digital pedagogy?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I guess I felt like that question when it came up was more like, I've been teaching writing for a while, but now I really want to take this step into the digital world with my students because I know how important it is. So I've just learned so much this conference. What's a good first and second step to take? And actually, we had a fantastic session on that. The presenters, I think, addressed that really nicely about their own first steps. It was called Developing Digital Literacies Teachers in Transition, and Dr. Kristen Turner and teachers that she brought together in the Fordham Digital Literacies Collaborative, they created a professional learning group, and they selected some texts to read, and they all decided, okay, I'm going to do X project, and they all had their own projects. And some of the teachers work at schools in New York City where they have very little technology, but they wanted to figure out how to make it work anyway. So they shared 4 teachers, 5 teachers shared their journeys in the ELA classroom and of the steps that they took in the last year. And some of them jumped into the pool, and some of them dipped their toe in the water. So that was really intriguing, just to sort of see the continuum in that realm.
Yeah, great. Any other issues that you want to discuss?
Yeah, well, so your question about what are things that we might sort of focus on here in the future, whether from a research or practitioner standpoint, I think the research already tells us that students are motivated by technology, but I think an ongoing question I have, I mean, certainly anecdotally, we see that when students are engaged in writing in digital spaces, they can produce amazing things, but I'd like to know to what extent writing in digital spaces and producing digital media really improves the quality of students' writing and their ability to be more independent writers and think about writing in a more complex way. I think I'd like to see our conference look at that next year to a greater extent, because we didn't really look at assessment at all. So I think sort of assessing where does this put us. The other thing I did want to emphasize, which I haven't brought up, is that something really exciting about this conference, and this was a goal of the conference, was to really have a conversation, or many conversations, between K-12 practitioners and university faculty, because I don't think those conversations happen enough, so that we all know what everybody else is doing and can, kind of move together in a similar direction. So I'm hoping we are going to continue that conversation next year. We've already started planning the 2016 conference and thinking about what that will look like and changes we might make. So.
Well, that's a good segue to talk about collaboration. So it sounds like you are forging some new collaborations potentially for this upcoming conference. And you mentioned your partners previously, but is there anything else you want to say about how those collaborations worked, or just mentioned those partners again?
So, yeah, so the writing projects of Michigan, I want to say there are 8 or 10 writing project sites in Michigan, and every writing project site is affiliated with a university or exists in a university. So we had 4 partners this year, and we're hoping to bring in 2 more for next year, 2 additional sites, meaning people from those writing projects will sit on the planning committee and help us make decisions and help us get the word out and help us moderate and do the professional learning with the webinar facilitators. And also help select who's going to present. So those partnerships, I think, are really important because I think one of the goals of the conference was to get people from different writing project sites really talking with one another. I think there was a time prior to my work in Michigan when some more of that was happening, and that had sort of fallen off. So we really wanted to get more interaction happening between writing project sites, and in fact, we did all the planning virtually for the conference, but the planning committee is finally getting together for dinner face-to-face this Sunday, so that's kind of nice. We're driving from all over the state to see each other. And so those kinds of casual conversations, I think, can be really important for moving this work forward in the state. But it's not just about the state. I mean, we had 750 registrants from all over the country, and we actually even had some people participating. We had someone from Egypt, and I think someone from Turkey actually in sessions live. So the National Writing Project has also talked about supporting the conference and helping get the word out. So we really do, I think, want to elevate the profile of the conference for next year and get some more sponsors. We had some really good sponsors this year, including a great writing platform called Writeabout, which is sort of a blogging / social media platform for K-12 students. And then the Michigan State Masters of Educational Technology program, they also sponsored us, in addition to a nonprofit called Literacy and Beyond that's based in Port Huron. So, yeah, we're always looking to expand the network, for sure.
Yeah, but it sounds like you had a great group of collaborators already, so.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff going on in Michigan, but like I said, we do want to expand. I think we want to expand beyond Michigan, including our presenters. I think we would like more out-of-state presenters for next year. So.
And then, so we've already been showing viewers how they can access some of the presentations and the materials. They're all archived online. So that's one way, obviously, that they can still access everything that you've developed. What are some other ways that our viewers, scholars, practitioners might get involved with some of your initiatives?
Well, I mean, in addition to just checking out the archive webinars, if anyone's interested in being on the planning committee, they can certainly get a hold of me. You can just Google me, and you'll find me pretty easily. But also, we are looking for people to be on panels, and we're looking for people to be special invited guests. Our special invited guests tended to be university faculty. For example, we had a really nice session on video poems from two scholars from the University of Buffalo. So David Bruce and Suzanne Miller, which is a fantastic session. So we really would love even more university level participation. That would be fantastic. So and also just look for the updated website. We're going to be deciding on our date for next year, and you can participate pretty actively in the sessions.
All right. Well, and we'll go ahead and post a link to that as well, obviously.
And I should also note that the 4T Maine conference is starting, it's in May. So while our conference is in October, the Maine conference is in May. And this year it is May 21st through 23rd. So that's more generally about effective tech integration.
And I assume, is registration open for the conferences pretty much through until when they take place?
Oh, yes. I mean, you can continue to register even after the conference has started. There's no limit on that. We haven't opened registration yet for next year. I think probably in December that will happen, but
it's another benefit of a virtual conference.
That's right. You can register right up to the very last minute, and even after it started. No penalty.
Okay, great. Well, Delia, do you have any closing thoughts you want to share with us today?
Closing thoughts. I don't know. Gosh, I feel like I've said an awful lot. I guess I would say that I think that this is the new frontier when it comes to professional learning. I think it's really, really exciting that people from all over the world can get in a virtual room and have a conversation and share ideas, and that the concerns are so common, whether you're an educator in California or Michigan or Honduras, or we've had participants from Honduras before at the 4T. So that is incredibly exciting to me that we can do that, and it costs nothing as a participant to do that. So that's my final thought. And I guess I would say if you haven't attended a virtual conference, give it a shot. There's some other ones out there. The Global Education Conference is coming up, and that's really global. So and there are sessions running 24 hours a day. So that's another one to check out.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. You've given us such insight into the logistics of organizing a virtual conference and so many great resources for approaching writing in the K-12 classroom using digital tools. So we'll post links to all of those for our viewers. And if our viewers are interested in more information on writing in the K-12 classroom, definitely check out posts from our blog Carnival contributors. So, for example, they include posts on how to use particular kinds of digital formats like blogging or web comics, but they also discuss how to overcome obstacles in quality digital writing, which was an issue that you brought up, Delia. So through approaches like focusing on audience and context or fostering an offline culture of feedback. So finally, to hear more about digital writing in the K-12 classroom and to share your own ideas and experiences, please do join us for a Twitter chat, which is #DRCchat, which will be held on Monday, November the 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern. All right, thanks so much.
Thank you, Delia.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks, Delia.